Hello friends, welcome you all to my YouTube channel English Lovers. Friends, in this video we are going to study complex sentence and we are going to identify main clause and subordinate clause in the complex sentence. So friends, what is complex sentence? So complex sentence is such a sentence in which there is one main clause and one or more subordinate clauses. So if a sentence fulfills these two conditions, that is, if it has one main clause and one or more subordinate clauses, then we say that it is a complex sentence. So what is main clause? Main clause is that clause which is not dependent on another clause for its meaning. The clause which has its own meaning, that is called main clause. And what is subordinate clause? Subordinate clause is that clause which is dependent for its meaning on another clause. Okay, तो मेन क्लॉज को उसको अपना मीनिंग होता है, लेकिन सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज जो होता है वो मेन क्लॉज पर डिपेंड होता है उसके मीनिंग के लिए. और जनरली सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज एक कंजंक्शन से, जिसको हम सबऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शन कहते हैं, उससे शुरू होता है. तो हम इस वीडियो में कुछ सेंटेंसेस देखेंगे और हम जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि उसमें से मेन क्लॉज कौन सा है और सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज कौन सा है. सो लेट अस बिगिन. सो ऐसा क्वेश्चन है, आइडेंटिफाई द मेन क्लॉज एंड सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज इन द फॉलोइंग सेंटेंसेस. तो ये कुछ सेंटेंसेस हम देखेंगे और इसमें मेन क्लॉज और सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज कौन सा है ये जानने की कोशिश करेंगे. तो पहला तो सेंटेंस है, आई नो दैट जॉन हैज पास्ड द एग्जामिनेशन. ओके, तो इस सेंटेंस में मेन क्लॉज है आई नो और सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज है दैट जॉन हैज पास्ड द एग्जामिनेशन. नेक्स्ट सेंटेंस, आई नेवर बिलीव्ड व्हाट यू टोल्ड मी. So in this sentence, main clause is I never believed and subordinate clause is what you told me. Next sentence, I reached the bus stand before the bus left. I reached the bus stand before the bus left. In this sentence, main clause is I reached the bus stand and subordinate clause is before the bus left. Next sentence, if he behaved well, I would help him. If he behaved well, I would help him. In this sentence, main clause is I would help him and subordinate clause is if he behaved well. Next sentence, I saw him while he was coming out of his office. I saw him while he was coming out of his office. In this sentence, main clause is I saw him and the subordinate clause is while he was coming out of his office. Next sentence, I know that Mohan is a bank manager. I know that Mohan is a bank manager. In this sentence, I know is a main clause and that Mohan is a bank manager is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, what you told me is true. What you told me is true. In this sentence, is true is the main clause and what you told me is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I helped him because he was very weak. I helped him because he was very weak. In this sentence, I helped him is a main clause and because he was very weak is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the man whom you met at the party is a doctor. The man whom you met at the party is a doctor. In this sentence, the man is a doctor is a main clause and whom you met at the party is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I went to his house because he needed my help. I went to his house because he needed my help. In this sentence, I went to his house is a main clause and because he needed my help is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, Vikas told me that he had bought a house. Vikas told me that he had bought a house. In this sentence, Vikas told me is a main clause and that he had bought a house is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, although he has bought a car, he always rides a scooter. Although he has bought a car, he always rides a scooter. In this sentence, he always rides a scooter is a main clause and although he has bought a car is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, he told me that his father joined the company when he was young. He told me that his father joined the company when he was young. This sentence is little bit different in the sense that it has two subordinate clauses. So here main clause is he told me and two subordinate clauses are, the first is that his father joined the company and second is when he was young. Next sentence, I saw him while he was crossing the road. I saw him while he was crossing the road. In this sentence, I saw him is a main clause and while he was crossing the road is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the fact is that he has never attended the meeting. The fact is that he has never attended the meeting. In this sentence, the fact is a main clause and that he has never attended the meeting is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I shall help you if you pass this examination. I shall help you if you pass this examination. In this sentence, I shall help you is a main clause and if you pass this examination is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, he noticed that she was wearing his daughter's dress. He noticed that she was wearing his daughter's dress. In this sentence, he noticed is a main clause and that she was wearing his daughter's dress is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I shall see you after I have finished my lecture. I shall see you after I have finished my lecture. In this sentence, main clause is I shall see you and the subordinate clause is after I have finished my lecture. Next sentence, he told me that the Prime Minister would visit Lucknow. He told me that the Prime Minister would visit Lucknow. In this sentence, he told me is a main clause and that the Prime Minister would visit Lucknow is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, although I reached the college at 9 a.m., I couldn't see the principal. Although I reached the college at 9 a.m., I couldn't see the principal. In this sentence, I couldn't see the principal is a main clause and although I reached the college at 9 a.m. is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the rumor was that she had been dismissed. The rumor was that she had been dismissed. In this sentence, the rumor was is a main clause and that she had been dismissed is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, as Shakti had returned early, we went out for a walk. As Shakti had returned early, we went out for a walk. In this sentence, main clause is we went out for a walk and subordinate clause is as Shakti had returned early. Next sentence, you may leave the class as soon as you have finished your paper. You may leave the class as soon as you have finished your paper. In this sentence, you may leave the class is a main clause and as soon as you have finished your paper is a subordinate clause. Next one, I last met him when he lived in London. I last met him when he lived in London. In this sentence, I last met him is a main clause and when he lived in London is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, he told me that Sheela had stood first. He told me that Sheela had stood first. In this sentence, he told me is a main clause and that Sheela had stood first is a subordinate clause. Next one, we had lunch as soon as we reached Gulmarg. We had lunch as soon as we reached Gulmarg. In this sentence, we had lunch is a main clause and as soon as we reached Gulmarg is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I'll see Mr. Mehta if I visit Valsad. I'll see Mr. Mehta if I visit Valsad. In this sentence, I'll see Mr. Mehta is a main clause and if I visit Valsad is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, he fell on the floor while he was entering the room. He fell on the floor while he was entering the room. In this sentence, he fell on the floor is a main clause and while he was entering the room is a subordinate clause. Next one, Mukesh reached the station at 5 a.m. in order to catch the first train. Mukesh reached the station at 5 a.m. in order to catch the first train. In this sentence, Mukesh reached the station at 5 a.m. is a main clause and in order to catch the first train is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, although he was always happy, he did not love anyone. In this sentence, here, he did not love anyone is a main clause and although he was always happy is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I reached college before her examination had begun. I reached college before her examination had begun. In this sentence, I reached college is a main clause and before her examination had begun is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, if I go to Connaught Place, I'll buy a shirt. If I go to Connaught Place, I'll buy a shirt. In this sentence, I'll buy a shirt is a main clause and if I go to Connaught Place is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, he proved that his results were correct. He proved that his results were correct. In this sentence, he proved is a main clause and that his results were correct is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, she found that her locker had been opened. She found that her locker had been opened. In this sentence, she found is a main clause and that her locker had been opened is a subordinate clause. Next one, my assumption is that fertilizer prices will be reduced. My assumption is that fertilizer prices will be reduced. In this sentence, my assumption is a main clause and that fertilizer prices will be reduced is a subordinate clause. Next one, she assumed that you would attend the meeting. She assumed that you would attend the meeting. In this sentence, she assumed is a main clause and that you would attend the meeting is a subordinate clause. Next one, he told me that she was not right. He told me that she was not right. In this sentence, he told me is a main clause and that she was not right is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, she feels that we should buy a car. She feels that we should buy a car. In this sentence, she feels is a main clause and that we should buy a car is a subordinate clause. Next one, the minister announced that the bridge would be constructed within a week. The minister announced that the bridge would be constructed within a week. In this sentence, main clause is the minister announced and the subordinate clause is that the bridge would be constructed within a week. Next one, she is insisting that we should pay an advance on the rent. She is insisting that we should pay an advance on the rent. Here, she is insisting is a main clause and that we should pay an advance on the rent is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, Mohini suggested that we should go on vacation. Mohini suggested that we should go on vacation. Here, Mohini suggested is a main clause and that we should go on vacation is a subordinate clause. Next one, the general has ordered that the troops should move immediately. The general has ordered that the troops should move immediately. In this sentence, the general has ordered is a main clause and that the troops should move immediately is a subordinate clause. Next one, the fact is that he never attended the meeting. The fact is that he never attended the meeting. In this sentence, the fact is a main clause and that he never attended the meeting is a subordinate clause. Next one, the recommendation was that all the employees should be promoted. The recommendation was that all the employees should be promoted. Here, the recommendation was is a main clause and that all the employees should be promoted is a subordinate clause. Next one, the girl who is standing near the counter is a television actress. The girl who is standing near the counter is a television actress. In this sentence, the girl is a television actress is a main clause and who is standing near the counter is a subordinate clause. Next one, the table which we bought yesterday is made of teak wood. The table which we bought yesterday is made of teak wood. Here, the table is made of teak wood is a main clause and which we bought yesterday is a subordinate clause. Next one, the gentleman who came in the morning has left a note for you. The gentleman who came in the morning has left a note for you. Here, the gentleman has left a note for you is a main clause and who came in the morning is a subordinate clause. Next one, I met the coach who trained you. I met the coach who trained you. Here, I met the coach is a main clause and who trained you is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the girl whom you selected has drafted this letter. The girl whom you selected has drafted this letter. Here in this sentence, the girl has drafted this letter is a main clause and whom you selected is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the lady with whom you traveled to Delhi has sent you a card. The lady with whom you traveled to Delhi has sent you a card. In this sentence, the lady has sent you a card is a main clause and with whom you traveled to Delhi is a subordinate clause. Next one, the scooter which is lying under the shed has been painted recently. The scooter which is lying under the shed has been painted recently. In this sentence, the scooter has been painted recently is a main clause and which is lying under the shed is a subordinate clause. Next one, I have bought the book which you had recommended. I have bought the book which you had recommended. In this sentence, I have bought the book is a main clause and which you had recommended is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the house in which I was born was constructed in the 19th century. The house in which I was born was constructed in the 19th century. In this sentence, the house was constructed in the 19th century is a main clause and in which I was born is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I know the girl who was sitting next to you in the plane. I know the girl who was sitting next to you in the plane. Here, I know the girl in the plane is a main clause and who was sitting next to you is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the girl whom we have selected wants to meet you. The girl whom we have selected wants to meet you. In this sentence, the girl wants to meet you is a main clause and whom we have selected is a subordinate clause. Next one, the dog which ran after you was very ferocious. The dog which ran after you was very ferocious. In this sentence, main clause is the dog was very ferocious and the subordinate clause is which ran after you. Next one, this is the pen which I found on the floor. This is the pen which I found on the floor. In this sentence, main clause is this is the pen and subordinate clause is which I found on the floor. Next sentence, I'll show you the house that your grandfather built. I'll show you the house that your grandfather built. In this sentence, I'll show you the house is a main clause and that your grandfather built is a subordinate clause. Next one, the girl that you were speaking to is my cousin. The girl that you were speaking to is my cousin. In this sentence, the girl is my cousin is a main clause and that you were speaking to is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, the lady whose house you bought is on the phone. The lady whose house you bought is on the phone. Here, the lady is on the phone is a main clause and whose house you bought is a subordinate clause. Next one, the table whose leg was broken has been sold. The table whose leg was broken has been sold. Here, the table has been sold is a main clause and whose leg was broken is a subordinate clause. Next one, the director who made this film has been selected for the national award. The director who made this film has been selected for the national award. In this sentence, the director has been selected for the national award is a main clause and who made this film is a subordinate clause. Next one, I met a girl whose mother is your colleague. I met a girl whose mother is your colleague. Here, I met a girl is a main clause and whose mother is your colleague is a subordinate clause. Next one, we live in an area which is threatened by floods every year. We live in an area which is threatened by floods every year. In this sentence, we live in an area is a main clause and which is threatened by floods every year is a subordinate clause. Next one, this is the house where I was born. This is the house where I was born. In this sentence, this is the house is a main clause and where I was born is a subordinate clause. Next one, the office where my father works is at the corner. The office where my father works is at the corner. In this sentence, main clause is the office is at the corner and subordinate clause is where my father works. Next one, the man who is drinking coffee is an army officer. The man who is drinking coffee is an army officer. In this sentence, main clause is the man is an army officer and subordinate clause is who is drinking coffee. Next one, the films that Doordarshan telecasts are good entertainment. The films that Doordarshan telecasts are good entertainment. In this sentence, the films are good entertainment is a main clause and that Doordarshan telecast is a subordinate clause. Next one, Dr. Singh, who is sitting in the library, wants to see you. Dr. Singh, who is sitting in the library, wants to see you. In the sentence, Dr. Singh wants to see you is a main clause and who is sitting in the library is a subordinate clause. Next one, my sister who lives in Delhi is a pilot. My sister who lives in Delhi is a pilot. In the sentence, my sister is a pilot is a main clause and who lives in Delhi is a subordinate clause. Next one, I met Sharda who had also come for the dinner. I met Sharda who had also come for the dinner. Here, I met Sharda is a main clause and who had also come for the dinner is a subordinate clause. Next one, when I reached his house, he was writing a letter. When I reached his house, he was writing a letter. In this sentence, he was writing a letter is a main clause and when I reached his house is a subordinate clause. Next one, I gave him money because he was stranded. I gave him money because he was stranded. In this sentence, I gave him money is a main clause and because he was stranded is a subordinate clause. Next one, I reached the station before the train left. I reached the station before the train left. In this sentence, I reached the station is a main clause and before the train left is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, when she reached the office, she did not find anyone there. When she reached the office, she did not find anyone there. In this sentence, she did not find anyone there is a main clause and when she reached the office is a subordinate clause. Next one, I met Renu after I had finished my work. I met Renu after I had finished my work. Here, I met Renu is a main clause and after I had finished my work is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, I have not seen him since I left Bahrain. I have not seen him since I left Bahrain. Here, I have not seen him is a main clause and since I left Bahrain is a subordinate clause. Next one, when I first saw him, I thought he was a lawyer. When I first saw him, I thought he was a lawyer. In this sentence, I thought he was a lawyer is a main clause and when I first saw him is a subordinate clause. Next one, Sanjeev Kumar, who is a famous chef, visited my house yesterday. Sanjeev Kumar, who is a famous chef, visited my house yesterday. Here, Sanjeev Kumar visited my house yesterday is a main clause and who is a famous chef is a subordinate clause. Next one, this is the book that won numerous awards. This is the book that won numerous awards. Here, this is the book is a main clause and that won numerous awards is a subordinate clause. Next one, Newton proved that gravity has a downward force. Newton proved that gravity has a downward force. In this sentence, Newton proved is a main clause and that gravity has a downward force is a subordinate clause. Next one, the singer who sang melodiously was given a standing ovation. The singer who sang melodiously was given a standing ovation. In this sentence, the singer was given a standing ovation is a main clause and who sang melodiously is a subordinate clause. Next one, Ravi told me that he had gone to the saloon yesterday. Ravi told me that he had gone to the saloon yesterday. Here, Ravi told me is a main clause and that he had gone to the saloon yesterday is a subordinate clause. Next one, since he works late in the night, he does not see his family much. Since he works late in the night, he does not see his family much. Here, he does not see his family much is a main clause and since he works late in the night is a subordinate clause. Next one, if we take the cab, we will reach the station on time. If we take the cab, we will reach the station on time. In this sentence, we will reach the station on time is a main clause and if we take the cab is a subordinate clause. Next one, while you were dancing, we went away. While you were dancing, we went away. Here in this sentence, we went away is a main clause and while you were dancing is a subordinate clause. Next one, wherever you go, do not forget to carry your identity card with you. Wherever you go, do not forget to carry your identity card with you. In this sentence, do not forget to carry your identity card with you is a main clause and wherever you go is a subordinate clause. Next one, I was not able to sign into my email account because I had forgotten my password. I was not able to sign into my email account because I had forgotten my password. In this sentence, I was not able to sign into my email account is a main clause, and because I had forgotten my password is a subordinate clause. Next one, speak clearly so that we may understand. Speak clearly so that we may understand. In this sentence, speak clearly is a main clause and so that we may understand is a subordinate clause. Next sentence, if you work hard for the exam, you will do well. If you work hard for the exam, you will do well. Here, you will do well is a main clause and if you work hard for the exam is a subordinate clause. Next one, though it was a sunny day, they preferred to stay indoors. Though it was a sunny day, they preferred to stay indoors. Here, they preferred to stay indoors is a main clause and though it was a sunny day is a subordinate clause. Next one, the house was quiet as if nobody was home. The house was quiet as if nobody was home. Here, the house was quiet is a main clause and if, as if, nobody was home is a subordinate clause. Next one, he pretended as if he did not know me. He pretended as if he did not know me. Here, he pretended is a main clause and as if he did not know me is a subordinate clause. Next one, we will inform you as soon as a decision is made. We will inform you as soon as a decision is made. In this sentence, we will inform you is a main clause and as soon as a decision is made is a subordinate clause. Next one, the kids rushed out of the zoo when they heard the fire siren. The kids rushed out of the zoo when they heard the fire siren. Here, the kids rushed out of the zoo is a main clause and when they heard the fire siren is a subordinate clause. Next one, the actress who was well known in Bollywood decided to try her luck in Hollywood. The actress who was well known in Bollywood decided to try her luck in Hollywood. In this sentence, the actress decided to try her luck in Hollywood is a main clause and who was well known in Bollywood is a subordinate clause. Next one, he assured me that he will complete the project by this week. He assured me that he will complete the project by this week. In this sentence, he assured me is a main clause and that he will complete the project by this week is a subordinate clause. Next one, although it was late, I agreed to go out for a movie. Although it was late, I agreed to go out for a movie. In this sentence, I agreed to go out for a movie is a main clause and although it was late is a subordinate clause. Next one, I don't know if it is raining outside. I don't know if it is raining outside. In this sentence, I don't know is a main clause and if it is raining outside is a subordinate clause. Next sentence and the last one, the entire country celebrated when India won the World Cup in cricket. The entire country celebrated when India won the World Cup in cricket. So in this sentence, the entire country celebrated is a main clause and when India won the World Cup in cricket is a subordinate clause. So friends, I hope कि आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगा होगा. अगर आपको वीडियो अच्छा लगा हो तो वीडियो लाइक कीजिए, अपने दोस्तों के साथ शेयर भी कीजिए और अगर आपके कुछ कमेंट्स है, सजेशंस है तो आप नीचे कमेंट्स बॉक्स में लिख सकते हैं. और अगर आप नए हैं मेरे YouTube चैनल पे तो चैनल सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलिएगा और सब्सक्राइब बटन के सामने जो बेल आइकन है उसको भी प्रेस कीजिए ताकि आपको नए नए वीडियोस के नोटिफिकेशंस मिलते रहेंगे. तो फ्रेंड्स चलिए मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. थैंक यू.